Hi, welcome to Unschooling Conversations. Today I am joined by Angela Harders, and in this episode we are going to share with you our unschooling journeys. I'm Heidi Steel. I'm a former teacher and unschooling parent to 4 school-aged children who are happy and they're happy living and learning as they go. They've always been unschooled. And we have been doing this for almost 10 years. I blog regularly. I organise coaching courses and mentoring services on unschooling, which you can find out more about at liveplaylearn.org. And you can also find me on Facebook at Live Play Learn, where I provide daily support and encouragement for your unschooling families. So hi, Angela. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Sure. My name is Angela Harders. I am a certified bilingual teacher right outside of Washington, D.C. I have 2 children, my 7-year-old daughter, Sophia, and a 3-year-old son, Benjamin. And even though I'm a public school teacher, we are an unschooling family.
Fabulous. Now, lots of my listeners are from the UK. So I am going to ask you if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about where you live and what it's like there. And remember that no detail is too insignificant, because lots of us probably don't have the experience of living near Washington DC. So you go for it. Tell us a bit about where you live.
Sure. So I live about 20 minutes from the White House. I actually live in Maryland, which is just to the north of Washington, D.C. And I live in one of the largest and teach in one of the largest districts in the entire country. So the school that I teach at, I teach special education at a high school, which is grades 9 through 12. And my school has over 2,000 students in it. So it's a very, very large school. So that's kind of what our district is. I live in like a neighborhood, kind of like what you would see in the movies, what would be, I guess, called a suburb. So it's not quite the country, but also definitely not city life either. I'm kind of in this happy medium in the middle, where our kids can go outside and ride bikes, and we have a forest area close by so they can go and explore there. But we're also really close to grocery stores and things like that. So that's kind of what it's like where we live in the suburb area.
Fabulous. I don't want to sound entirely British, but I would really like to know. So we're recording this just at the end of September, and I would really like to know what the weather is like for you right now.
So it is warm. I'm not sure what the temperature is in Celsius, but in Fahrenheit, it's been about in like the 70s, but it's definitely starting to get a little bit colder. So now towards the end of September, you'll see people, wearing short, like I have a short sleeve shirt on, but they'll have like pants with a short sleeve shirt or something. So it's definitely starting to get cooler, but it's still nice and warm that we can be outside. This is actually my favorite time of year because it's not really, really, really hot like how it is in the summer. And it's also not terribly freezing either. So for me, this is perfect.
Yeah, mine too. I agree. I love going into autumn, and I love coming out the other side into spring as well. That's sort of just nicely warm weather. So tell us a little bit about what you are up to as an unschooling family at the moment. How do you spend your days? What your children enjoy doing?
Yeah, so we actually are really fortunate to live in an area that has a lot of other unschooling families. So in our area, we actually have to register as homeschoolers. So any child that wants to homeschool, you have to notify your county that you're going to pull your children out of the public school system. And here we have the ability to either be supervised by the county or to be supervised by another organization called an umbrella. And so since I did not want to deal with the county at all, I chose to go with an umbrella, and our umbrella is actually unschooling friendly. So they supervise our homeschooling, and most other people have to actually present a portfolio. I don't know. Do you guys have to do that in the UK? Like, do you have to keep a portfolio of all their work and show it to someone, or?
No, this might be a good point to intervene and say, in the UK, we do not have to register. So if your child has never been to school, there is no avenue or no requirement by law for you to register. If your child has been in school, you deregister from school and they will notify your local authority, who have some responsibility to ensure that your children are receiving a suitable education. But there are there's some law and some guidelines around how they are to do that, and what they can and cannot do. So predominantly in the UK, if the local authority inquires of you about your home educating and what's taking place in your home, particularly for unschoolers, the advice is to write a report. It's lovely, really.
Yes. You have so much freedom. Well, and here every state is different. So every state has different requirements. And the state that I'm in, we are required to teach 8 different subjects. And then we have to demonstrate that we've taught them over 180 days. And so typically the county will have you produce some sort of a portfolio, where you have to provide proof of all of their work, but not just their work. You have to prove that you have taught them over, the 180-day requirement that they have for us, and that you've covered all 8 subjects thoroughly throughout those 180 days. So they have a lot of requirements for the county in that sense. And actually, my first experience with homeschoolers was helping another family. Because I was a teacher, I also tutor on the side. And there was a family that came to me that they did their homeschooling through the county, and the county felt like they didn't show them enough proof that they had done enough. Mm-hmm. And so they were actually threatening to charge them with neglect and have them have some pretty hefty penalties for not being able to prove that they had done enough to whatever they thought was enough. And they were at risk of losing the right to be able to homeschool, and being forced to put their children back in school if they couldn't do that. So that was actually my first encounter with homeschooling families and helping homeschoolers, was helping this family avoid being charged with neglect of their children, because they didn't save all the worksheets that they had done over the whole year. Wow. Yeah, so that was our first thing. So I'm really fortunate that I've connected with this group of unschoolers. That is the umbrella organization that we go with. And so ours actually is, they meet in person 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, my kids go there. And there's a group of about 90 kids that go to this facility. It's basically an unschool school. They have a room for all the different kind of subject areas. So they'll have a library, a music room, an art room, a science room. They have like a stage with dress up things for kids that want to do that. They have a commercial kitchen. So if kids want to learn how to cook, they have a professional chef that comes and provides free classes on how to cook in a commercial kitchen. They have a courtyard where the kids are learning like sustainable growing if they want to. They have an outdoor area. So literally any interest that a child could have, they're able to do it there. And so we have loved that. It has kind of been our oasis in the middle of all the craziness with the pandemic, to be able to get together with these other families. They were open the whole time, which was nice. So we were able to get together and meet and have our kids be able to play while the rest of the kids in the county were stuck at home on Zoom all day. And we were playing and having fun and enjoying life. So that's where we go Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I actually started a group, because my passion is real life experiential learning. And of course, being in the DC area, we have access to so many different museums and historical sites and things like that. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I usually plan some sort of day trip or something. And I invite, I have a Facebook group. And so I have over 100 families that are in there. And I just put out our calendar for the month of these are all the different places that we're going to go. And I try really hard to become a tourist almost of the place where I live. I've been born and raised here, but I feel like I haven't really explored where I live until I started unschooling. And I was like, I want to know what kind of fun things there are to do in my area. So that's what we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I actually started a day programs for homeschoolers. So for other families that have to work. So I have my kids plus 3 other kids that come with us and they participate in all the activities with us. And yeah, and so we go to parks and nature centers and beaches and museums and um, anywhere we can go basically that's outside and we can avoid a lot of the COVID restrictions. So yeah, that's kind of what a day in the life looks like for us, or our weekly schedule typically looks like.
That's fabulous. I did I host a monthly webinar with my lovely friend Naomi Fisher, and one of the questions somebody asked us in that webinar was, do we have to be all out unschooling for it to be successful? To which my answer was obviously yes, because I think if you're going to aim high, like, do it properly. But you go all in. But you've raised an interesting point, which is that actually around the world there are different restrictions and requirements under law, depending on where you live, about what is actually required. And we have to either take those seriously, or I interviewed somebody else who actually even moved countries so that they could have more freedom, or be creative about, like you are giving here, examples about being creative about how you are meeting those requirements whilst also being, true to, what you believe is a great educational philosophy. I'm going to just mention a few things about the law in the UK, because I think this would be a really good point to do that. And I've never covered it before in the podcast, and it'll be really interesting for you to get a good comparison about what it's like here. So if the local authority do contact you, there are some things that you do not have to do. And it's important that we mention the things that you do not have to do, because these are often the things that the local authority will suggest that might happen. So it's useful to actually mention that you don't have to. So you don't have to let them in your house or accept visits or telephone consultations. You don't have to complete the forms that they give you. The forms here are often sort of school-based and based on school type learning. So maybe put into subject headings that, as unschoolers, we might find that tricky, although it's not impossible to do. And the forms don't often actually reflect the range of home educating options that there are for people. And you don't have to be subject to constant monitoring. Local authorities are permitted to make what's called informal inquiries, and it's suggested that annual contact is sufficient enough. So if they're contacting you more than annually, then you are within your right to refer them back to your previous contact, and then say that you will happily respond to them, a year from the date of the original contact. There are other things that you don't have to do either. I am actually reading this directly off of my own website. So if people wanted to go, so if people wanted to go and look it up, that's liveplaylearn.org. So the information is there. But as home educating parents, you're not required to have a timetable or set hours of education or observe school hours. There are no legal requirements for children at home to do any of the following: acquire specific qualifications, have a premises equipped to any particular standard, so you don't have to aim for the child to, I've written that twice. Aim for the child to acquire specific qualifications. I've written that twice. You don't have to teach the national curriculum. So the national curriculum here is the curriculum by law that they teach in schools. And linked to that is you don't have to provide a broad and balanced curriculum, which is sort of the heading of the national curriculum. That's
Uh-huh.
supposed to be broad and balanced. We don't have to supply that. You don't have to make detailed lesson plans. You don't have to give formal lessons. You don't have to mark work done by your child. You don't have to formally assess their progress or set objectives. You don't have to produce school type peer group socialization, and you do not have to match school-based standards according to your child's age or school year group. So they're just a few things that are useful to know if you are unschooling in the UK. Anyway, so back to you.
That's really
How did you find out about unschooling?
Oh, I love this question. So I actually found unschooling through being a gentle parent. And I guess I found gentle parenting through being an attachment parent. When I became a mom, I feel like we all start being parents and we have these ideas of all these things that we're going to do or not do. And then when you're actually a mom, it was kind of like all that I just threw out the window. All the things that I was planning to do, I just didn't do and did everything so differently. I really clicked with the attachment parenting style of parenting a newborn or a baby. And so I did a lot of like baby wearing and breastfeeding and co-sleeping and all of those kinds of things. And it was really important to me to have like a loving and connected relationship with my baby. And so I feel like that naturally blossomed into having a loving, connected relationship with my toddler. And so I ended up researching when my daughter was around 1. I started researching about what the Bible says about spanking because I wanted to make sure I was doing that one right. I was planning to spank her. And through my research, I discovered that there really is no biblical basis for hitting a child. And that was like totally mind-blowing to me. And I shared what I had been researching with everyone that I knew. And so I ended up having several people say, you need to put this into a book so other people can have access to this. And so I did. So I published my first book, Gospel-Based Parenting, about my journey into gentle parenting. And then as my daughter started approaching school age, I really started thinking about how can I apply these principles of respect and kindness and gentleness when it comes to our approach to education. And so it was kind of out of that same vein of wanting to treat my daughter with love and kindness and respect as an infant, as a toddler, and then now as a 5-year-old who's having to go to school. And around that same time, I had started reading books by John Taylor Gatto, Dumbing Us Down. Someone had recommended that book to me and I read it, and it was just, I felt like my heart was breaking with every page because I could see everything that he was writing about in his book, decades ago, I was still seeing in my classroom every single day. And at that time I was teaching Algebra 2 at my high school, and I was just devastated. The kids were bored out of their minds. They were miserable. And I just kept thinking, why are we, yes, I love that book. So Dumbing Us Down. So that was the first one that kind of got me thinking, like, why are we doing what we're doing? And so I was reading this book while I was teaching public school. And I remember sitting in class and just thinking, we were talking about how to graph a quadratic function, and we had spent weeks working on graphing quadratic functions. And I remember thinking, I have not done this since I was in high school. Why are we spending so much time and energy and effort doing these things that don't matter in real life, things that they're probably never going to use, things that aren't serving them, things they're totally bored about, not interested in. Like, why are we forcing kids to learn these things? And so I started thinking about that. And then that led me to look into John Holt's book about how children learn, because I was learning about learning and the ways that kids learn best. And so that book, so you're going back to the bookshelf. I'm assuming you have that one. So after John Taylor Gatto's book, I started reading How Children Learn by John Holt. And I was very intrigued with the things that he was writing because I could definitely see that. I saw that my daughter was passionate and curious and excited about learning and excited about life. And then at the flip side, I would see my students in high school that were miserable and bored and apathetic and just seemingly not interested in anything that we were learning about in our Algebra 2 class. And so I saw that dichotomy and I was like, okay, what happens between this super excited 4 or 5 year old and this absolutely miserable 15-year-old? And so I actually ended up listening to a podcast by Pamela Rickia called Exploring Unschooling. And her podcast was kind of my first introduction to the word unschooling. And when I listened to her podcast, I just remember thinking, there is no way that is possible. Like there's just no way. I had spent a good portion of my career as a reading teacher. So I'm like, how can she say that kids can learn how to read? Like that was my whole job. Like people paid me well to teach their children how to read. And yet here she is saying that kids can learn how to read without anyone teaching them. And I just thought there's just no way. So I kind of figured I would play a little experiment with my daughter. Actually, she went to public school. She went to public pre-K for 2 hours a day. And in those 2 hours, it was terrible. She came home every day crying and would talk about her teacher screaming at the kids, and the kids would bully her and make fun of her. And then she came home one day from preschool saying that her teacher had grabbed her by the wrist and dragged her to timeout. And we, because we're gentle parents, we don't do timeout. And she had these marks on her wrist. And so I was like, okay, that's it, no more. So she did go to public school for a few months. But after that day, I pulled her out and I was like, I don't know how I will be able to homeschool her, but I'm going to find a way. So that was when I figured I would give unschooling a try. And my philosophy was, I'm going to go all in, just like you said. I'm going to give it all I've got. I'm going to like really, all or nothing. And if it goes great, then great. And if it is totally terrible, or I hate it, or she hates it, we can always change. And so that was kind of my mentality. I figured I'll give it a try. And if it works, awesome. And if not, we're not stuck with this one way. And I knew in kindergarten, I'm like, how bad can I mess up kindergarten? I've taught kindergarten for years. I know she'll be able to recover, the colors and the numbers. She knew most of that already. So I wasn't too worried about messing her up with kindergarten, but I really wanted to observe, like, how can a kid learn how to read? That was probably the biggest thing for me. I was terrified that I was going to be the reading teacher with the child who didn't know how to read. That was my big fear. So that was how I got started with unschooling. It was kind of this evolving journey from birth until she, finally went to public school, and it was like, nope, no more.
I wonder what for you are your sort of best bits about unschooling? What are the things that you really see in your family life as a result of unschooling that really bring you joy?
I love being able to share life together. I think for me, that's been the greatest thing, is that all of life can be fun. I love your like live, play, learn. Like, I truly feel like that is the heart of unschooling. Like, we're living together and literally everything that we do is play. Everything we do is fun. There is no like force or coercion in our relationship. There's no manipulation. There's no bribes. There's no threats. There's none of that. And it really is. It's just love and appreciation and cooperation and communication and fun. And so I really enjoy that. And I also enjoy being able to see her like growing in her passions, and seeing how a lot of times like my own passions kind of melt over or like overflow into the things that she's starting to become curious about what she wants to do. And so like I've published several books now. So I published my book about gentle parenting, and then I also published a children's series called the Crunchy Kid series. And so my daughter actually said she wanted to write a book for the Crunchy Kids series. And so she did. And so that was super cool to see. She was so excited to write her own book, to be a part of this series that I had created. And so now she actually just published her second book last week. And I don't have that one with me, but I'll have to send you the link so you can see it. But yeah, so, she's 7 years old and she's published 2 books already. And I'm just like, I feel like that's incredible, just to see her chasing her dreams. And when people ask her like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? She's like, well, I want to be an author, but I already am. It's like she doesn't have to wait to grow up to be what she wants to be. Like, she can be an author right now.
So what we'll do is in the show notes for the podcast, I will put links to all the things that you have mentioned. So your own books that you've mentioned that you've published, your daughter's contribution, we can put those in there as well, and the resources that you have found helpful. So I will put links to the books that you've mentioned and to Pam Laurentier's podcast, Exploring Unschooling, which we mention quite frequently actually on this podcast also. So that all the links will be available in the show notes. So what would you recommend to other families who are beginning their unschooling journey? What would you recommend they do, or where do you recommend they should like practically, in their home, what are the first things that they should look at doing?
I would definitely recommend having each person share kind of like their bucket list, because I'm realizing that unschooling isn't just about supporting my children and their passions, but I also get to pursue my own passions too. And so having every single person in your family share the things that they want to do, or the things they want to accomplish, or what they're excited about for that year, or a goal that they have. I think that's a really, really great place to start, and then to look for every day to make sure that every person is doing something that they love every single day. That would probably be my one piece of advice, that you do what you love every day.
Fabulous. And how do you see, I don't know what my question is really. How do you see, I think you've answered it already, so maybe I won't ask you that. I was going to ask about how you see your children benefiting from unschooling, but I think you've touched a little bit on that. Maybe if there's anything you'd like to add to it. How do you see your children benefiting?
I think that I see my children as free. I think that they see themselves as free and as people that have valuable contributions to the world. They're not looking for someday when they grow up to be able to have something valuable to contribute to the world or to our family. And they know that they are valued today, just how they are, as they are. And so I think that's really cool to see. And then just seeing them very sure about what they love, and seeing them enjoying life. I mean, I remember working with kids or tutoring kids in all these different subjects that they hate, and just seeing how miserable they were, and realizing that, learning can and should be fun. And if it's miserable for you, or if it's miserable for your kid, something's off. It can and it should be fun. And so if it's not, then that should be kind of a warning sign to you that we need to change something, whether that be, I don't know, holding off on something, or not trying to force or pressure something quite at that moment. If they're not enjoying what they're doing, I mean, life is too short to be miserable, I feel like. And yeah, so I think the more that you can create joy in your home and happiness for yourself and your kids, I think that's the goal, that our kids can be happy and healthy.
You can now support the podcast on Ko-fi. That's KO-FI, where you can contribute via a one-off collection of £5, or by subscribing monthly. Monthly subscribers receive pre-releases on blog posts, previews for the podcasts, and free access to monthly webinars and more, as a thank you for your ongoing support. So if you are a regular listener, I would like to invite you to contribute via kofi.com/live, play, learn. Of course, if that's not within your capabilities right now, I continue to welcome you here just as you are. And thank you for listening and taking time to consider unschooling in your family. And now back to our unschooling conversation. Yeah, one of the things I say quite a lot is do more of the things that you love. And that's sort of, when I'm trying to encourage families to sort of live an unschooling lifestyle, or, to sort of continue on their unschooling journey. It's one of the things I say a lot, the things that you should be seeking to do are the things that you love, and do those until you don't love doing them anymore, then go and do something else.
Do something else.
Just go wherever that leads you, and it's okay for us to, and it's okay for our children and us as well, to enjoy what we're doing. We have this weird sort of concept that it's the separation of work and play, or work and leisure time. In children it would be maybe more work and play, and work and learning comes under the work umbrella. And work and learning has to be serious and hard work, and you've got to concentrate, and there's got to be some effort put into it, and it just doesn't have to be like that. Like, you can enjoy what you're doing and love what you're doing and be interested in what you're doing and learn at the same time. In fact, I often say that learning under those conditions is actually more effective, more efficient. There's actually more. You're being interrupted by tea.
That is a worthwhile interruption.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and under those conditions, there's actually more growth and more connection in your mind, and the learning that's going on, because you're relaxed and because you're enjoying it. So go out there and do more of the things you love. And you've touched on a topic that quite often comes up in the conversations I have, which is I think it touches on the topic of self-care. It's not, unschooling is about how we educate our children and how we live our lives with them, but we are part of that equation, and that means that we should be actively caring for ourselves as well. And part of that, as you say, is thinking, what brings me joy? What do I want to spend my time doing? And when our children are small, that can be it can be quite difficult to fit those things in, and we have to be quite creative maybe, or thinking sort of really small, like I used to think in much smaller chunks in terms of, what do I need today? Well, today I would really like a shower, and today I would like, drinking tea is quite a big thing in my life. I like it, taking a moment to drink tea. And as they grew up, I had more time for bigger pursuits or longer pursuits, or things that I could maybe do in small bits. So I taught myself how to crochet. I use this example quite a lot. Taught myself how to crochet, and that's something that I found quite easy to, I could do some. Then and I could do that with my children in the same room if they were happy doing something, or if they were at, if we were at the park or something, and I would sit and do that. But it was also something that I could quite easily just put away, if they needed me. So I think we have to be a little bit aware of, what our children need as well. But the importance that says, we matter too, and we have to nourish ourselves too. Otherwise, we end up in a position where we are not able to support our children fully because we don't have the sort of reserves or the energy or the capacity to do that, because we haven't actually actively taken care of ourselves. So I am going to ask you to share what, I mean, obviously you like writing because you've written some books, but is there anything else that you do that helps you to take care of yourself and your needs, like more on a daily basis? What are the things that are important to you? What do you need?
Well, I'm actually very blessed. My best friend lives with me, and so she helps me a lot. And I actually live in a basement apartment where my parents are, and so my parents are right upstairs, and so they're here too. And it's such a blessing to be able to have kind of a little community so close. So if I'm, needing a break or something like that, or I want to, I don't know, spend some time reading. I really enjoy reading. I like to play the piano. I would like to learn how to crochet. It's on my list. But I know how to knit. So sometimes I will do that too. And so it's nice. I'll be like, all right, it's time for you to spend some time with your grandparents, and my kids will go up and spend some time with my mom and dad, and I'll get a chance to, I don't know, do something, read a book or something like that. Or get the laundry done, or any of the other things that have to be done that sometimes I try not to do when I'm with them, so I can be present with them. But yeah, it is important to be able to have that time, and to be able to have that balance. But it makes a difference to have people in your life that can support you, and in having that time and that flexibility to be able to care for yourself too.
Yeah, so that's the second time you've mentioned community, actually. I mean, obviously you there specifically talking about people that are very close to you in terms of your relationships with them, and having them on board with what you're doing and being able to support you in that in your home, actually, is fantastic. But previously you also mentioned your community in terms of the contact you have with other parents and unschooling families, and how you make contact with them regularly, and make this effort to cultivate relationships for yourself and for your children, which is really important. And I highly recommend that people, even if they can't do that in real life, or even if they're struggling to find people local to them in real life, that they reach out online. There are lots of online communities that people can do that, because when we are when we're choosing to parent in a way that is countercultural, we quite often, well, we can ask those people those questions, can't we? We can go to those people and say, I'm really tired, I've had a really difficult week, and share those things with those people. But in my experience, their default answer is always, have you considered putting your children in school? As if that's the answer to everything, and as if all your problems are going to go away if you do that. But actually what you need is a community that's able to relate to you and to be able to support you and say, well, actually, maybe your kids can come and play with my kids for the afternoon and you can take a break, or have you thought about changing what you're doing slightly in this area, so it just changes the dynamics of that situation slightly, or having people who have been there, or having people who understand that you don't want to put your child in timeout is not the answer that you're looking for, so that you're getting support that is in line with your parenting philosophy and your educational philosophy. So yay to community, and to having parents on board that are available and willing to help out. That is certainly, it certainly sounds like a blessing for you.
Yes. It is. Yeah. I mean, truly having a community does make all the difference. I feel like most parents, when they start homeschooling, that's always been the biggest fear that I feel like they share is, oh, if I homeschool, my kid won't get to socialize. Which I always thought that was kind of a bizarre fear because I'm like, have you been in like a classroom recently? Like everyone's like, sit down, shut up, do your work. Like there's no socializing that's happening in classrooms for the most part. So I always thought that was kind of bizarre, but that was something that was very important for me that if I was not going to be putting her in this schooling environment, I wanted to make sure that we were cultivating friendships that did share our values and did share our beliefs and that would be able to support us and in growing, that community that is so important to navigating this journey, together and being able to help one another and serve one another. And yeah, it is very important. But I like that you mentioned even just having that support online too, because it can be hard to find local people who feel the same way. Although there are out there, I feel like once you find some, it just kind of spreads like wildfire. But yeah, definitely joining groups on Facebook has been really helpful for me, and looking up unschooling groups and local unschooling groups. That's been really, really helpful. And if there's not something, creating it. That was the other thing too, I think is really, really important. If you're out there and you feel like there's no one around that's doing something that you would want for your kids, then go ahead and create that for them and offer that to other children in your community and see who shows up. So that was what I did with with our field trips on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's been wonderful to see, over 100 families now that are a part of that. And just to see that growing, just by providing a space. I mean, literally is nothing else than today we're going here and just providing that opportunity and seeing people show up, and because they're wanting connection and community too. So yeah.
Yeah. Fabulous. So gentle parenting is where it all began for you. And I know that you are going to be talking and sharing about gentle parenting at a seminar. So I feel like I should give you the opportunity to explain where you're going to be doing this and what you're going to be talking about.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you. So I'm actually speaking at the Gentle Christian Parenting Summit, which is going to be taking place next week, which is October 4th through the 8th. So I believe this episode will air after that. But even if you miss the live version, you can still register. It is a virtual summit. And so there are over 20 different speakers that are sharing different aspects about gentle parenting, Christian parenting. I'm actually going to be having 2 sessions, one about gentle parenting and the gospel, so gentle parenting as a Christian, and then another one that is called Disciplining and Discipling Like Jesus, which is actually going to be a book that I should be releasing. I'm hoping it will be able to be released before December. So Disciplining and Discipling Like Jesus, that goes into the more practical strategies of how do you parent? What are these tips and tricks and strategies that we use to parent like Jesus, after we choose that we're not going to spank, we're not going to punish, we're not going to manipulate or threat or coerce, when all those tools that most of us use, when we decide not to use those tools anymore, what tools will we use instead? So that will be that session. And I'm actually also going to do a bonus session. So for people that get the all access pass, you'll have lifetime access to all the videos. And I will have a bonus session in there talking about gentle parenting and schooling, and specifically how gentle parenting really paves the way into unschooling, because I truly believe that as gentle parents, unschooling is the natural fit of how to approach schooling in a way that aligns with our values as gentle parents. So I'm really, really excited about that session, because I know a lot of gentle parents do homeschool, but I do think it's important for us to really think about, even in a more structured or formal school at home dynamic, that there still are those elements of force and coercion that just aren't there when we choose to unschool. So I'm excited to share the gift that is unschooling with the gentle parenting community.
Thank you so much for joining me. We are doing sort of a reverse recording soon where Angela is going to have the opportunity to ask me all the questions, and I will get to answer those for her on her podcast, which is called Peace World Schooling. Is that right? Did I get that right?
The Peaceful World Schooling podcast.
Peaceful. There you go. Peaceful World Schooling podcast, which I will also put a link to in the show notes, and listeners can join me again next month in the next episode of Unschooling Conversations, which I have no trailer for this episode, so it will be a complete surprise for everyone. So thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Heidi.